Guys, Jessica here. So today's video is going to be a little bit different because we're going to talk about the latest wearable to hit the market, but it hasn't actually hit the market here in the US. It does appear to be for sale in the UK. We do have a lot of information about it because Medela actually shares a lot when they launch a new pump. Some pump companies do not, but Medela has a huge educational component and they still target the lactation community in terms of like lactation professionals. So we already have a lot of information about the new Medela wearable, and I'm actually really excited for it. There's lots of stuff that I think could be really good. I have no idea if the technology is going to work, and I'm not going to know until I can get my hands on it. As of right now, I cannot import it to the US. There is no one selling it that I have found an option to import to the US. As soon as I do, and you best believe I will be looking, as soon as I do, I will have more in-depth review. But there are actually quite a few things that were released by Medela that we can talk about. So let me just go. This is their Magic and Bra pump. I don't love the name, so we'll talk about that up front. I don't think calling any breast pump magic is a great idea because they're not magical, they're tools. And when we're dealing with milk supply, calling something magical, it feels a little predatory to me because there are just a lot of moms who are reliant on this equipment. They're investing their money in this equipment, but they don't really understand it. So I don't love calling it magic because it's not going to be magical. We've actually seen a lot of the features that are going to be included on this pump on other pumps. It's just a variation on the technology. They are advertising it as trusted hospital performance. Where this gets a little interesting is that they're comparing it to their clinically proven Medela Symphony. That is one of our top true like multi-user pumps. It is not a bad pump. It's not the best pump we have out there though. So, I would love to see a pump that acts like the Medela Symphony. We saw a little bit of it with the Medela Sonata, but they didn't get the programming right. The programming on the Medela Sonata in terms of cycle speeds and suction patterns did not match what we had on the Medela Symphony. And that's where it kind of fell short. Your programming matters just as much as your actual pump functions. But where this gets a little interesting is that the Medela Symphony is a piston pump, which means it's mechanical suction. There is a tube inside a cylinder that is sliding in and out to create the suction. And it is a standard suction pump, which means it is a pull and release. It pulls and then goes back to zero. It tops off at about 255. And I actually have tested a large number of the Medela Symphonies that are circulating in hospital rental programs. They actually top out about 220, 230 on average. I think it's because they wear and they get used for long periods of time. So right away, there was a couple things where I was like, this is not going to be quite comparable. It is supposed to be lightweight. I'm going to assume that they can measure correctly. So I'm going to give them that this could be one of our lightest breast pumps yet if it is only 7 ounces. Now that's 7 ounces before we add the milk capacity. And I have seen a couple numbers float around based on the capacity. I would expect that we're looking at a 4 to 6 ounce capacity. It's just going to depend, and we actually won't know that until we get it in the hands of real moms because whatever the company says is actually irrelevant. We need to see how it's going to shape out. It is supposed to have this transparent look down, which I think could be really good as long as we can see from top and side. And it does actually appear from the patents and the design that we should be able to see from top and side. Where that will become a challenge is that if we are using inserts, so like this insert just happens to be the one sitting on my desk, but you can't see through this insert, but you can see through this insert. We do have clear inserts in a wide variety of sizes. We're just going to need to wait and see what inserts are compatible with it. It is advertised as having a 105-degree angle, which is a more oval shape to it, more similar to the Maimon Pano. And we do have some problems getting inserts to fit those wider angles because if the lip, which is this part of the insert, does not neatly sit against the pump, it can actually create a source of irritation. It also does have that light. We have seen the light, Motif Aura is trying to use the light. I think there's actually supposed to be an Amida that's going to glow. NCVI is really, they seem to be pushing that kind of glow light. Motif Aura, it's completely useless because you can't see through the flange. We could see it paired with other things. We did see that same light style with the Tommee Tippee wearable, which is going to be particularly relevant because that is going to be close to the technology we're using. We actually have 2 pumps that predate the technology that Medela is going to use that we're going to talk about. This is supposed to have sensor-controlled technology. It appears to be able to not only read the volume of milk, but it's claiming that it has the ability to go back and forth between stimulation and expression. To date, that technology has not actually been utilized it could be a really good thing if it actually works. My concern is that typically those are going to be preset to a typical flow of milk. As a pumping professional, what I see is a lot of moms end up pump dependent, which is who this technology is going to appeal to, is the mom that is pump dependent, because this is not going to be cheap. This wearable is going to be about $450 to $550 is my estimate for the US market. Could actually be a little bit more because it is more advanced technology. So we could be looking at even a $600 pump without it being like outside of, reality. It's not going to necessarily account for the people that have a slow flow. Some people have a really strong letdown, others do not. So we don't know yet whether this is going to be super practical or not. That is going to be a huge thing that has to be determined. And I'm hoping that we will still get manual control of this. If we are locked into a program that is sensing stuff, if you have low supply, if you have a slow trickle of milk, or if you have a heavy milk ejection reflex, we could struggle with that because the programming may not be 100% tailored to you. And what a lot of pump companies do is they actually limit their test control groups to particular milk supplies in order to, maintain safety because there are safety standards. So this is going to be new. We don't know how this is going to work. It's going to take us some time to see how it's going to work. And I would say we're not going to be able to like confidently say yes or no to that technology until we've had thousands of moms use it and we know what all the limitations are. It does report having app connectivity, and you can see that in the like cover photo. I mean, I took these photos right off of a website that's advertising it. They're all over a couple different websites in the UK. We're using them for an educational purpose, so that we're not violating anybody's, copyright protection. But this is what they're advertising. It's supposed to have app connectivity. The app is supposed to be able to read the milk. It does appear that it's going to give us a lifetime estimate of milk, which makes sense with the technology that they're advertising. Now, here's what really caught my eye as the first thing we really got to think about before you go investing in this. So they're labeling it as FluidFeel technology. We've seen this. It's the result of the tunnel is likely going to fill with milk and it's going to move the milk in separate quantities. So instead of, when you use this flange, it's going to steadily move the milk through the duckbill. With every cycle of the duckbill, milk is going to move. This is not going to move it with every cycle of the pump. If it was moving it with every cycle of the pump, you should not have milk surrounding it. Now, they're advertising it as a beneficial thing because it could allow the nipple to feel warm and wet, which is what we see with nursing. So it could be helpful. Now, they say that it supports gentle milk extraction even at high vacuum levels. We've actually seen this technology elsewhere, and that's with the Willow Gen 1, Gen 2, 3.0, and 360. And this same technology has been heavily criticized by a lot of lactation professionals because the tissue can actually become fluid logged because the nipple is sitting in milk. Your baby's mouth is not sitting full of milk, it's sitting full of saliva. Saliva and milk are not the same chemical compounds. So yes, your nipple is meant to be able to tolerate baby saliva and to sit in baby saliva, but milk is not the same chemical compound. We did have some people who were unable to use the Willow generation technology because their tissue simply broke down. It repeatedly broke down because of tissue maceration, which is what happens when tissue becomes fluid logged. Where this could be particularly hazardous is that we are seeing an increase in moms who are trying to wear pumps and not take them out right away. We have a lot of experience with the Willow Gen pumps and know that that is a disaster waiting to happen. We see a lot of tissue damage. I actually specialized in that pump, still do, but for many, many years, there were only a handful of us that would actually work with that pump and not just tell you that you had to go get a different pump. We saw some pretty gnarly nipple damage. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I'm a little concerned about the way they're saying that it allows gentle milk extraction even at high volume levels or high vacuum levels. Whoo, red flag Medela. Tissue that is waterlogged and sitting in water is actually far more vulnerable than tissue that is being protected from sitting in milk. So that's not how that works. There's nothing about this patent, there's nothing about this pump that is going to violate the laws of how human tissue works. So that is a concern. And then they actually have a class up right now, and I will link that. But they have a whole class for lactation professionals to take on their thing. And I actually grabbed this graph from here, but it's their suction. And when I first looked at this, it actually looks to be a fairly standard suction pattern, but it's a constant suction pump. So this pump is not pull and release. Pull and release, up, down, back to zero, up, down, back to zero. This, I actually ran it through an AI program and took this chart and asked it to look at my chart of, there's 100 different pumps that I have the cycle graphs for, and to pull out the pumps that most closely mimicked it. When the graph is positioned like this, it pulls out things like the Spectra, it pulls out things like the Medela Symphony. And it actually pulled out the Simori pumps, which is what caught my attention. This graph is inverted from the way we would look at any other suction pattern. And I mean, they're not misleading. You can look at suction two different ways, but this makes it look like it goes up, and then that hiccup right there that we see at the top of that graph, that's the indicator of the piston. That's the piston actually like starting to reverse movement. We get this little hiccup line, which is why it picked up on that. However, when we flip it to look at what it actually looks like, it has a fairly quick increase. The hiccup belongs down here at the bottom. That is happening when it is collapsing. So this is the collapse and the restart of the pull. So it goes up fairly quickly, and then it holds. Guys, this is holding it 270 to 300 mmHg. We've actually never had a constant suction pump that goes that high. The two constant suction pumps that we have that are wearable are the Willow 360, which, that also includes all the Willow Gen predecessors. That topped out at 255. The Tommee Tippee pump, they're made for me wearable. That is a constant suction wearable, and that topped out at 270. And what we saw was pretty gnarly nipple damage, because if you pair constant suction with full control, a lot of moms will turn it up. A lot of nipples do not perceive the normal movement when they're using constant suction. So they don't perceive it the same way. So they will turn it up trying to get more milk. Constant suction has a longer adjustment period than standard suction. Your body has to get used to this very unique mechanism. The fact that this goes to about 20 mmHg is also curious. So it drops down to about 20. So 0 would be down here at the very bottom of the graph. It doesn't go all the way to 0. What we saw with the Willow 3.0 when they first launched that program is that it actually went really low. It went to about 35 mmHg, if I'm remembering correctly. And we actually saw a lot of nipple pain because that swing was enough that unless you were using the lowest settings on Willow, that swing was too much with constant suction. When we look at other constant suction pumps, like what we have with the Limerick pump, which is actually our gold standard in constant suction, the swing is not that much. So that swing, referring from that lowest point to that highest point, this is going from 20 mmHg to about 300 mmHg. We've never seen a constant suction pump go that high. It also has what they're labeling as a comfortable hold. And do you know what pumps the AI picked out for that? The only pumps that really hold that. We have the Spectra Synergy Gold, but you have to be maxed out on the Synergy Gold to get it to hold for that length of time. And very, very few people max out the Synergy Gold. The Baby Buddha has that hold. The Baby Buddha does have that hold. The Rumble Tough, like their Breeze pump, it has that hold. It can be a really good thing, but we've never seen that with constant suction before. But this is also a hold pattern that is known to cause nipple sensitivity in some people. So there are a lot of factors here. We are about to get a constant suction pump that has a higher range of suction than what we've ever seen before, despite the fact that most people do not use a constant suction pump above about 220. Anything above 220 is indicated as a probable cause of nipple damage. We're about to get another pump that allows the tissue to sit in milk, which may or may not be a good thing. We're going to find out now whether it's something about the Willow pattern or it's that water retention that we get in the tissue from that design. Like, there's a lot of things that we're going to get answered as to whether there was something else about the Willow and we've misattributed the reason behind some of the damage we saw with that pump. We're going to get answers because we're going to basically duplicate it. We're going to find out whether that, what they label as a comfortable hold, whether that's accurate. Now, they're saying that this is programmed like the Symphony. Cycle speed wise, yes, this appears to be, I would say that this is probably like their top level on expression. You typically use your higher levels on expression to show your pattern. And the reason for that is because you get less cycles on the graph, so you get more detail because it's a bigger thing. This is running about 54 cycles per minute. They did say in that little class that they're having that their lowest cycle is 60. with the way that we count cycles, depending on how you do it, yeah, it's possible that that's accurate, but it's also like it's a little bit of like I'll have to test that myself and see whether that's accurate. But this exceeds the pressure of the symphony, which typically we need a little less pressure with a wearable and more pressure with a traditional pump because we're getting that backwards effect. We're going to have to be extremely careful with this pump with franchising. We're going to have to be extremely careful with this pump with bra fit because this is a constant suction pump. We have already seen that when we had two constant suction wearables on the market, they are both heavily indicated in nipple damage because they were complicated to use correctly. I'm going to say we're probably going to start out with the same rules for the flange fit where we want it to be close to exact. We're going to have to really watch the length. They talked in their class about the nipple not moving. Looking at this graph, I'm calling BS on that right now. There's no way that you can put a nipple under this suction pattern. Anything above 150 mmHg, we're going to get tissue movement. And this is going to have that hold at peak suction. That is going to be like the baby Buddha. We're going to see that that nipple is actually going to stretch more. So this may be a risky proposition for elastic nipples. I'm actually really excited about this pump. Like all in all, let me go ahead and turn off this graph because we don't need it anymore. But I'm really excited for the Medela wearable. I think it is actually one of our new innovations that we're going to see on the market. It is offering things that other companies have been trying. I actually think that sensor technology of that ability to switch between simulation and expression, that's actually likely what Willow and Elvie were arguing about in court, is that they both wanted to try to do that, but neither of them necessarily had the technology nailed down. Now, does Medela have it nailed down? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. I kind of hope they do because if they've nailed it, we need that technology in other forms too. So this is just going to be a case of, we need to see how this is going to play out. I'm hopeful for it. I'm excited for it. I am extremely cautious about how I'm going to use it. Like when I put it on my own body, I'm going to treat it very respectfully as like, a worthy adversary because I like my nipples staying attached to my body. I would like to keep them firmly attached. And I just have this weird complex about wanting to keep them undamaged. And in order to do that, I think you're going to have to be very careful when you use this pump. It's going to be a higher price point pump. I have no idea what replacement parts, like how frequently they're going to need to be replaced. It doesn't appear to have like a bag option. So I don't think we're going to be looking at something that's going to be quite as expensive to operate as like the Willow Gen 1 and Gen 2 are with the bags. But, Medela does tend to have a little bit higher price point. They tend to use proprietary parts. They tend to lock down their patents really, really well. So we tend to not see a lot of generic part competition for years after they launch their machines. So as soon as I get my hands on this, I promise you, I'm going to get my hands on it. I'm going to test it. I'm going to give you a much more thorough, in-depth review. I'm going to link the professional class that you can look at online. I'm going to link the article where I talk about should you buy new pump technology. If you're a brand new pumper, if you have a vulnerable situation where like you cannot afford to gamble on technology, maybe this is not going to be the pump for you. Maybe you want to give it a couple months on the market for us to get more things sorted out because there's a very real chance that we could find that this is incompatible with inserts the majority of people are going to need, or we don't have inserts that exist in the sizing and length that this is going to require. Or we could find that that is no big deal. We already are going to be able to use a lot of the products already on the market, and we have a lot of inserts and a wide range of options. So we could have virtually no problems. Medela's technology could work. It may be a flop. We've seen other pumps be a flop. It's a smart pump. We need to see, can it survive updates? There are great wearables that have been launched that have been, basically murdered by their updates and never worked again after the first update. There's a lot of unknowns here. So if you are in a position where you can't take that gamble, this may not be right for you just yet. If you're in a position to take a gamble and you're like, this technology sounds exactly like what I've been looking for, and you understand how you've got to approach it, you're going to, be capable of working through whatever learning curve, because we have no idea yet. This could be a Willow 360 where there's a long adjustment period, or it could be magical and that sensor technology could work so well that we essentially alleviate the need for that. We don't know yet. This is exciting though to get new technology. This is how this process works. We get new technology, we test it out in lifetime with moms. Moms are the ones who are essentially funding these research projects because if the pump is crap, it's still your money that got spent. So just think it through as to whether this is a good idea for you or not. If it's not a good idea, maybe sit this one out for a couple months. If it is a great idea, hey, even before I get the pump in my hands, we have dealt with enough of this technology that I am fairly confident I will be able to help moms to start to use it safely as soon as they get their hands on it. I'm really excited to see the first client with it. But that's kind of my thoughts on that. If you have questions, let me know. It will probably be a couple months before we see it here in the US because we see no data from the FCC or FDA yet. I would expect it could be another 6 months before we get it here in the US at least. But you never know. Medela is sometimes really good about it. And, there's an FDA drop, an FCC drop, and it's on the market in 2 weeks. You never know. So hopefully that helps and happy pumping.